Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House here with the amazing Charles Coulombe.
Amazing. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen, and see the amazing, astonishing, the never before. Yeah, I get it. Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's a circus act.
Yeah, all right, I can live with that.
the human encyclopedia.
Oh, boy. Step right back, ladies and gentlemen. Step right up. Yeah, I know. See the amazing human encyclopedia, followed by Lydia the tattooed lady and Oswald the geek.
The geek?
The geek, who will swallow a live chicken whole in front of your very eyes.
Gross.
Well, yeah, that was kind of the point. Obviously, somebody never went to carnivals in his childhood.
That's what they really did. They'd swallow live chickens whole?
Oh, well, not all at one gulp, but yeah, they'd eat them.
While they're still alive?
That's kind of what being a live chicken would be.
Wow, I just don't... Okay.
See, you missed out.
Yeah, I guess you'd call it that.
Yeah. I bet you've never seen a tattooed lady.
Well...
Well, they're not anymore. You don't go to a sideshow to see a tattooed lady.
No.
All right, stretch that. How about a bearded lady?
I haven't seen a bearded lady.
Two-headed guy?
A two-headed guy?
Yeah.
I've never seen a two-headed guy, no. I've seen a two-headed snake. LA Zoo.
Not the same thing.
Not the same thing.
Pinhead?
A pinhead?
A pinhead.
What
like
is that?
Zippy the Pinhead.
What, a small head?
Well, no, a head that kind of like goes to a little point. You know, sort of like a Klansman wearing a form-footing hood. Bishop, very form-footing.
It's like, the Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never seen
those.
Those.
Coneheads.
Coneheads, excuse me.
But a pinhead would actually don't look quite that weird, but a pinhead, have sort of an odd-shaped head with a little bit of hair on the top.
Wow,
Have you seen a pinhead?
No.
How about a dwarf?
You know what? I don't think I've seen a dwarf in person, or a midget in person.
A giant?
I just watched Andre the Giant documentary.
All right.
I've seen the Giant.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Charlie Green
He's
Giant.
French. You should love Andre the Giant.
I do. He's great. He made my life what it is today. All right. Well, I've got some news for you.
Okay.
Today is April the 4th in real time, which means it's the Friday before you're seeing this.
May 4th.
May 4th. That's right. May 4th. I know that. Now, it's two major feast days. One is St. Monica, mother of St. Augustine, and so patroness of both mothers with wayward children, especially sons, and of the People's Republic of Santa Monica.
Where is that?
It's on the west coast of L.A.
The People's Republic?
Yeah, the People's Republic of Santa Monica. They have a big statue of St. Monica there, which is interesting. Now...
They turned communist over there?
Well...
The People's Republic?
They've been that way for quite a while. And speaking of People's Republics, what did you notice about the food in the commissariat at lunch?
It stank.
Come on, it did not stink as badly as usual.
Okay.
Even though it's Friday. In fact, actually, if you had been able to bring us somebody at the fish and chips, they were quite good. And you know why?
Why?
The commissariat staff is on strike. They've been on strike all week. You haven't noticed the food is a bit better?
I haven't noticed, no.
Well, think about it. They've been on strike all week because they got a load of on making fun of them on this thing. So they walked out, and the suits upstairs had to get some caterers to come in and feed us.
Oh, okay.
Right now, until the strike is settled, right now we are eating food from the same company that produced Gidget 6. I mean, well, that did the catering on the set of Gidget 6 back in the 60s.
Is that a television show or a movie?
It was a movie. The whole series of movies. Gidget goes here, Gidget goes there.
That's not Ed Wood, is it?
No, a whole other thing. Gidget was, you'd have to have been a 60s person.
Ah.
But suffice to say that the elderly lady that runs it, she was actually that runs the catering company. She was actually an extra, one of the surfing extras for both the Gidget movies, the Frankie Avalon things, all those.
Wow, small world.
Indeed. She doesn't look anything like she did then, though, I can assure you.
No, I'm sure.
No, which is probably why putting her in a bikini in the kitchen was not a good idea. But anyway, suffice to say, that's why if you've noticed an improvement in the food, it's why.
Okay.
Commissariat's on strike.
Very good.
Yeah, I thought you'd be happy.
So did you hear about Brother Andre Marie, St. Benedict Center, and Amazon? You hear about that?
Yeah, I sure did.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Well, the Southern Poverty Shakedown Center would do something underhanded and disgusting. No. That Amazon would be a party to it, that is annoying. But it does make perfect sense if you think about it.
But let's explain to
All right, the Southern Poverty Law Center, known to those who know them as the Southern Poverty Shakedown Center, are renowned for calling groups hate groups. You see, that's their whole reason for existing, is to make a lot of money by basically blackmailing people to keep them off the hate list. If you're approached by them, then you give them 10 grand, you've nothing to worry about. But if you don't, then you will be denounced as a baiter and Higgin. Now, up until now, this really hasn't meant this much, and those horrible right-wing conservative newspapers, Harper's and Atlantic, have both denounced the Southern Poverty Shakedown Center as a Southern Poverty Shakedown Center, as opposed to a law center, in no uncertain terms, and their methods have been exposed. And that, I think, has cost them somewhat, because people were not paying the same amount of attention to them they did before, when they were supposed to be these somehow heirs of Martin Luther King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. But, as luck would have it, the owner of Amazon, the wealthy guy whose name escapes me.
Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, that's the one. He has got into partnership with the Southern Poverty Law Center people by stripping nonprofit status from any group or organization that's on the Southern Poverty Shakedown Center's hate list. So, this has a double advantage for both sides. I would not be surprised to find out that the Shakedown people are paying Amazon for the privilege. But here's the deal. A lot of nonprofits make a lot of money by selling stuff through Amazon. If their nonprofit status is cut off, that's terrible for them. And that means that a threat for being put on the Southern Poverty Shakedown Center's hate list has much more teeth than it has recently. Because if you pay them 10 grand, you escape long-term losses. See? Contrary-wise, it allows the head of Amazon to feel as though he's got a social conscience and is doing something to fight evil and badnesses. Probably, well, I won't say, but an unkind thought came to my mind about what he would do if he really wanted to fight badness.
Well, we unconditionally accept you, Charles, so go ahead and we won't judge you.
I think if he and the head of the Southern Poverty Shakedown Center extinguished themselves in a weird suicide pact, they'd be doing more to fight badness than anything else they could do.
Wow.
I told you it wasn't nice. Oh, and speaking of untimely deaths that could have been prevented, I neglected to mention that May 4th is also the Feast of the English Martyrs.
Oh, yeah, so what pin you got today?
Well, it's not the UN pin this time.
Ah.
I didn't have anything that referred specifically to the English martyrs, but then I remembered I had this pin from St. Albans Cathedral, where St. Alban is enshrined, he being the proto-martyr of Britain in the 200s under the Romans. So, in a sense, standing up for St. Alban is standing up for all of them. So.
Okay, that works for me.
All right, me too. I love St. Alban. I've been to both his shrines. There's a funny story about that, really, in that his shrine in England was destroyed at the Reformation. But a big chunk of his relics have been sent to the English community in Cologne, who built a beautiful golden shrine for him at St. Pantaleon in Cologne, which I've venerated before. Well, along around 1990 or so, they were doing repair work at the cathedral, and they found the pieces of his medieval shrine that had been broken up and preserved by being hidden. So they rebuilt it. They set those pieces up again. but they had a problem. The problem was they had no partners in Auburn. So they turned to St. Pantaleon in Cologne, and they gave him a shoulder blade.
Wow.
Which is what's now in the relic, and now the shrine. And then the shrine was rededicated with none other than Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, in attendance.
Very nice.
Yeah. So that was the resurrection of St. Alban's Shrine.
Okay.
And I make a point. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, you may not want to attend services at an Anglican church, but even if you don't, if they have a shrine of a Catholic martyr, or as is the case in some places in Scotland, a Presbyterian church, they've got the relics of a Catholic martyr. That's there for you to venerate, regardless of what other stuff goes on there. So if you go to Westminster Abbey, be sure to venerate St. Edmund the Confessor.
Yeah. Another development that people want your opinion on are what do you think of the Boy Scouts with the you know?
Yeah, I know.
Are you in favor of it or against it? Where do you stand on this?
How do you describe so completely against it you want to break things? Let me explain. I have a dog in this fight. My brother and I were both Eagle Scouts. 4 of my nephews were Eagle Scouts. Scouting is a big part of my growing up. So I'm not one of these people who don't really know anything about it but are willing to talk. Oh, yes. I think it's important that we make it all gender inclusive and really? Were you ever a scout? Well, no. Let me see. What else? Oh, yes, of course I was a scout. Really? Were you an Eagle Scout? Well, no, I never really got beyond tenderfoot. This is stupid. It's horrendous. One of the things that's powering it, though, in terms of giving them a market from which to draw, has been the decline of the Girl Scouts into a feminist organization. Because I can understand this. A lot of parents of daughters don't want them exposed to that. So the Scouts, the Boy Scouts, or IT Scouts, or whatever we're going to be called, Scouts BSA, emphasis on the BS, I think. I can see completely why they would want to pull their daughters out of the Girl Scouts into the Boy Scouts. So the Girl Scouts are fighting tooth and nail. I would tell those ladies that if you don't want to lose, stop being stupid. Get rid of your feminist agenda and go back to the original ideas of people like Lady Baden-Powell, Olive Lady Baden-Powell. Similarly, for the Boy Scouts, now here, let's have a long story. The Boy Scouts of America go back to 1905 or so, 1906. Now, are you familiar with the history of Scouting at all?
Not at all.
Well, Scouting was founded by a gentleman called Lord Baden-Powell, oddly enough, the husband of Lady Baden-Powell. It's one of those odd, clicky, kinky dinks that happen to people. Anyway, during the Boer War, Lord Baden-Powell was in charge of the city of Mafeking, in the Transvaal, which was under siege by the Boers. Well, there were a number of young lads from, say, 11 to 18, and he put them together into a scouting force so that the adult males could be released to man the barricades against the Boers. And so these kids were used to run ammunition behind the lines, messages, all sorts of things, to free up adult males. Well, he found he had a knack for working with kids, which he had not known before that. So he wanted to develop a program to take young men like that, and get them, partly to teach them what it is to be a man. I know. How can you even say that there's something separate like manhood? Oh, I know. Shut bloody up. That was a special message from me to all you non-gender people out there. Here's another one. That was vulgar. But as I was saying, you see, having a gender of my own, I'm proud of both of them. but not the others, or the third one that Governor Brown has. Anyway, as I was saying before I allowed my emotions to catch up with me, the scouting movement was born from him and a lot of other people putting their heads together about the best way to turn young men, well, to turn young boys into men, into gentlemen, into people who would serve their God and their country loyally, who would have the knowledge to survive in unpleasant situations, the leadership skills to get other people to do the same. Things like that. Woodcraft, all these sorts of things. And in the original British version, there was a lot of African influence for the Veld, scouting and all that, in place of our own American Indian influence, which was very big in the scouting movement. Although Baden Powell was also very much connected with the whole notion of what they called Red Indians in those days. But also Kipling was a big part of British scouting. And the whole Jungle Book motif. So you've got those African, Indian, and North American influences in scouting from the very beginning.
Interesting.
And initially, scouting went throughout the British Empire very quickly, and then spread outside France, Russia, the United States, Latin America, all over the world, because it met a perennial need. All right. Now, what happened then was that in 1905, a gentleman called William D. Boyce, 1900, I think, was when the Scouts were first organized in England. Could be wrong on my dates. But in 1905, an American was in London called William D. Boyce, and he was lost in the fog. He couldn't find the way back to his hotel. So up comes a kid in a funny uniform, and he says, "Are you lost, sir?" And he said, "Yeah." "Well, I'll guide you back where we have to go." So he told him, and he guided him back to his hotel. Boyce offered him money, and he said, "Oh, no, thank you, sir. I'm a Boy Scout. We don't take money for that sort of thing." And off he went. Well, Boyce was very impressed. And the next day, he took out an ad in all the major British publications asking for the name of the lad who had guided him. Never found out. So to this day, we call that kid the Unknown Scout. But Boyce came back to the United States, driven with the idea of starting an American Boy Scout equivalent. And he got together with people like Ernest Thompson Seton and some others, and they founded the Boy Scouts of America, about 1907, 1908. 1909 maybe. Anyway, whatever it was, the first edition of the Boy Scout Handbook came out. And the original Scout uniform, some elements of which have been retained at the present day, was designed. And for a long time, it was a really successful program. It worked quite well, but you began to get problems in the 60s. Several things happened. First, you had the development of a huge bureaucracy. First in New Jersey, then they moved to Dallas, Texas. I mean, a big thing. Now, what was the problem with big bureaucracy, you ask? Well, the answer is, you've got to defend it and keep it fed. That's the problem with big bureaucracy. So where everything had been, where most things had been done on the local level on a volunteer basis, this thing happened. The second thing that happened was the collapse of the family in the 60s and 70s. Because the heart and soul of the scouting movement was the participation of fathers. Now, obviously, not every father with a scout son participated, but a lot of them did.
Yeah.
So your assistant scoutmaster, sometimes your scoutmaster himself would be a father. And every committee was made up of fathers. The chairman of the committee was a father. But as the broken home motif became ever more popular in our dying society, you had more and more boys who didn't have a father at home. Now, there had always been a certain amount of these, but in that case, the scoutmaster, the assistant scoutmasters, and to some degree, the fathers of the committee or whatever, would take up the slack. But now there were so many of these that it began to be pushed for the women's, the mothers, to come into the committees and to sometimes act as assistant scoutmistresses and so forth. They didn't call them assistant scoutmistresses. But, so that began to put us on the road to where we are. Then in the 90s, it began to be pointed out that the Scouts were discriminatory, since they did not allow atheists, self-proclaimed atheists. As far as Scouting goes, Baden-Powell and the rest, his followers, always called for a religious basis to Scouting. Now, in the continent, that led to Scouting's fragmenting. In every major European country, you have basically three versions of Scouts: Catholic, Protestant, and moral but neutral.
Mm.
But in Britain and in the United States, it didn't happen that way. We did not fragment. The British later did fragment between the regular Scouts and what are called Baden-Powell Scouts, who are considered to be more loyal to the original vision of the founder. But in this country, the BSA remained a pretty big tent. The Mormons became ever more important. And then, but whatever you were expected to follow your own faith. So for instance, and this was helped by the fact that Scout troops would be sponsored often by churches of different denominations, but not exclusively. Some of them would be sponsored by Kiwanis or Rotary or an American Legion post, a VFW post. So it was a mix of things, traditionally. All right, well, and I'm giving you this long explanation, ladies and gentlemen, because this is history most people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, what should happen? But that starting in the 90s, pressure began to be brought to bear on the Scouts, partly because they did not allow atheists, and partly because they did not allow self-declared gay Scouts. Now, there's something I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen. Scouting for me was one of the most asexual experiences of my entire life.
Yeah.
It was something that never came up, and nothing we ever discussed. It just wasn't there. The whole notion of kids that young declaring themselves gay is the creation of diseased, and shall I say, pedophilic minds, yearning to help them with their issues. Yeah, I don't mind saying that. And yeah, the Scouts had the same problem with child molestation that other organizations that deal with kids tend to have. Molesters gonna molest, right up there with bigots gonna big and haters gonna hate.
Yeah.
And obviously they did various things to stop them coming in. Not always successful, sadly. But this whole notion of the sexualization of the Scouts is disgusting. And those who have pushed it are disgusting people, personally, as individuals. Let me make that really, really clear. All right. So, as gaiety became more important to our ruling class and our owners, local governments, who had always been friendly to Scouting, began to put pressure on them. So, for instance, the city of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, wink, wink, they had in one of their parks a beautiful building the Scouts had built, but they rented it from the city of Philadelphia for $1 a month, or $1 a year, rather. Led by Tony Rizzo Jr., the son of the great mayor of Philadelphia, but personally a piece of garbage himself, the city council declared that from now on they were going to be charging the Scouts market price, market value. And you know, in inner city Philadelphia.
What does that mean?
It means they'd force the Scouts out of their own building. That's what it means. It means that Rizzo and the rest of that mob of morons would drive them right out of the building they themselves had built. So, but they weren't the only ones. I mean, under Bush Jr., the Department of Defense were given the, because of the non-gay policy, the Department of Defense ordered to stop helping the Scouts. Because before there had been, Scouting had been able to use different campgrounds and so on, different facilities, and armed forces property. And that was under the great Republican Bush Jr. So these things it was getting more, and philanthropists who were pro-gay or gay themselves or whatever began pulling money from the Scouts. And all this started heating up. And it, of course, got worse under Mr. Obama, who, you know, was of nothing if not loving himself. And finally, the 2015, we had, of course, the great Mr. Justice Anthony Kennedy, that good Catholic, decided that marriage was intended by the founders of the Constitution to include same-sex marriages. Because Mr. Justice Anthony Kennedy, being himself all-knowing and all-wise, and better than anyone who ever lived, Mr. Justice Kennedy knew all this stuff. I hate to tell you which organ I think he drew the decision from. Anyway, it was his pancreas.
Oh, okay.
What did you think I was going to say?
Oh, gosh, I had no idea.
Well, there's a lot of selections. In any given body, there's a lot of organs to pull garbage out of. In his case, it was his pancreas.
Okay.
So, anyway. So, what happened was that there were a number of people in the Central Administration and Scouting who were fearful for the fate of the bureaucracy thereof, and saw that money was being lost. It was going to be a big, hard fight, and they didn't have the stomach for it. By this time, the largest single financial backer of Scouting were the Mormons. I mean, there's Catholic elements, and so every element is there, but the Mormons were the biggest, with the biggest financial push. So, what should happen? Initially, when this stuff was booted about, and I have personal knowledge of this, I don't mind saying, local Mormons all over the place stood up and said, "We're not going to stand for this. No way, Jose." Well, my brother and myself, having long-term experience with these sorts of things, we were drinking in a bar one night, don't be shocked. And the vote for the BSA Central Committee was coming up on the issue. And we were regaling each other with how various Mormon friends had sworn they were going to basically fight to the barricades. You know, start their own institution if they had to, but they weren't, no way they would give in. And we looked at each other and said, you know, we hope that's true, but if the prophet in Salt Lake City sees differently, it'll change.
Okay.
And they have a history of this. You know, whenever the politics get too rough, the prophet in Salt Lake City gets a different revelation.
Is that what they call it? Wait, what do you...
Yeah, it's the prophet.
That's their
President,
leader,
prophet, trustee,
figure?
and trust. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's their pope.
Okay.
Only he's got more power than the pope. Because he can change revelation. And the pope, even if they're stupid enough to try, they can't.
He can change their revelation?
Sure can. In the 70s, for instance, up until the 70s, blacks could not be priests in the Mormon Church because they were the descendants of Cain.
Okay.
In the Book of Mormon.
Right, yeah.
So, but in the 70s, after the Civil Rights Movement and all that, the Mormon Church began to look bad as a result. Suddenly, the prophet, trustee, and trust got a special message from above, and the religion altered.
Really? That's how they did that?
That's how they did that. So,
okay.
Ongoing revelation.
Okay, so moving on. So the prophet changed his mind on the Boy Scouts, and
the
they're not going to
next
fight.
bloody day.
After the bar?
The day after the bar. The next day. Whoosh, woo, that wind blowing around awful quick. I don't know. Man, Lazarus, better get in the cellar. This wind blowing hard. So what should happen? But that they caved. But then at the time, the Boy Scouts said, of course, this only applies to boys who are gay. It doesn't apply to, we won't have gay adult leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, my brother and I looked at each other and snickered. Like that was going to last. Sure enough, 2-3 months later, poof, literally. So, that was that. Well then, about a year ago, or less than that, the Mormon Church suddenly clutched its pearls and screamed in horror that there were gays being admitted into the Boy Scouts after they themselves had signed off on them. So they decided to pull out of Boy Scouting and start their own organization. See, rather than fighting, the way they said they were.
Yeah.
They pulled out. Well, now the bureaucracy in Dallas are faced with a problem. That's a huge chunk. How do you deal with that? You open the doors to chiclets, knowing that there's a ready-made market of disaffected Girl Scout parents.
Ah.
See? Not so stupid when it comes to keeping their guts full.
No, not at all. They're survivors.
Just eating up that chow. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I give them everything that's in the trash from our commissariat.
Yeah.
And you know, if it actually makes its way to the trash from the commissariat outside of strike times, you know it's been in the commissariat a while.
Yeah.
So so that's the great scouting adventure. And it's horrible. Now, fortunately, the national and archdiocesan and diocesan councils of Catholic Scouting have been about as useful as three-legged steers in terms of dealing with all this. There have been a couple of dioceses, and I mean a couple, is in 2 or 3 in this country, where the bishops have disassociated themselves from scouting over the whole thing. But most of them, it's business as usual. And why shouldn't it be? It's kind of like watching the Episcopal Church fall apart all over again.
Yeah. Wow.
And for an organization with such a proud heritage and history that's done so much good for so many people, yeah, I'm pissed off. Oh yeah, royally.
Okay. Woo! Let's get started.
All right. And we haven't even started. You've already had a rant from me, ladies and gentlemen, and we haven't even started.
No. People like it, those long episodes. They're like, oh, longer episodes, twice a week.
Send money.
Send money?
I make you a deal, ladies and gentlemen. You put us on an hourly wage, and we'll do this 5 days a week.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Remember, the more dough you send, the more you get of us.
That's right.
I don't want to say we're for sale or anything, but why should we be different from the Boy Scouts? What? Anyway, go ahead. That wasn't very nice.
Okay, the first question is from John. Charles, last week you talked about how the Novus Ordo has not done good for the Church. You've also said in the past that we should pray for the Novus Ordo to become more and more like the Tridentine Mass, and that the Tridentine Mass will eventually become the norm again. Do you think the Novus Ordo is a punishment for the laxity of Catholics? Growing up, I always heard about how awful the old days and the old Mass was. And now young people like myself are discovering the old Mass and love it and want to learn more about it and the rest of the Church's traditions.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. Not just the new Mass, though. I mean, everything. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we had all this good stuff which was intended to inspire us to evangelize, and we didn't. You know, since 1783 in this country and other times in other countries, we sat enjoying our Latin and our Gregorian chant and all that, but did we make any great effort to evangelize? No. So it was taken away from us. We didn't want to make the Protestants Catholic, so we were made Protestant.
Well, it's also, see, the other thing I was thinking about this, it's a burden that you have to bear. In order to have that motivation to evangelize, you have to have a burden on your heart.
Yeah.
To have the concern and the worry and to really put yourself out there and make an effort. But we don't want that burden. No.
We want to be left alone. And actually, mutatis mutandis, one of the ways the new Mass was sold to the priests was that it was easier.
It is.
It is easier. It's a lot easier on them. You know, it's not as time-consuming. It doesn't require paying attention to those nasty little rubrics. You can make it up with whatever pops into your pointed little head. It's just great. And it's easier on the layman, too, because they didn't have to fumble with their missals. They could just sit there and bathe in Father's wonderfulness, especially once he was turned around, you know, to share his personalities with the people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But the question was, do you think the Novus Ordo is a punishment for the laxity of Catholics?
Yeah. Yes, but one of a whole quiver of punishments, not just by itself. Everything.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't believe that the Church and most especially the sacraments, are necessary for salvation, then it doesn't matter anyway. And since we'd given up the one belief, we gave up everything else.
Yeah. Okay, next question from Dan McCabe.
Hello, Dan.
I have a Protestant cohort who is bent on saying that God has predestined souls for heaven and hell. In Scripture, on numerous occasions, it says God hardened people's hearts, and that we didn't choose Him, He chose us. There are many other indications of souls being damned by God as their destiny. How can I tell him that Jesus Christ died for all, and that all have a chance at eternal life?
Honestly, I don't think you can. He is very much committed to this idea. I have no doubt he's convinced that he is one of the elect. Usually you find people who hold these beliefs do not consider themselves to be one of the damned. The only time they do is when they lead scandalous lives anyway. And their excuse is that since they're one of the damned, they might as well have a good time. You will run across people like that, but not that common. It's just like when you find someone who thinks, who believes in a master race. People who believe the master races always think it's their own. You know, it's never, oh, there's a master race, it's not us, we're a bunch of schmoes. We were born to serve. We're just sort of losers, and we're here to do as the dominant people tell us to do, because we're so stupid and idiotic and stuff. Well, nobody that I've ever heard of makes that argument.
It's funny how that works.
I know, but it's true, you know. We're the moron tribe, and we've got whatever's coming to us, and we deserve the abuse that our masters give us. No, I cannot think of a single race, nationality, or group of people who have produced a thinker who said that.
Weird. Yeah, okay.
Strange but true. True stories of the intellectual marketplace.
Okay, so there's no way to convince this Protestant, because he's...
Well, you need to pray for him, number one. And number two, ask him why he thinks he's one of the elect. And if he says very piously that he can't be sure, then tell him that you're afraid to pray for him because you don't want to go against God's will.
Interesting.
And do that in particular if he's sick or has any problems and he asks you to pray for him, tell him you can't, because you don't want to violate his conscience since he believes that whatever happens to him, it's God's will. So you can't help him.
Do Protestants pray like that? Do they pray for each
Other
other?
people, yeah. A lot of them, not all of them. Some of them will say, oh no, you can only pray for yourself, or whatever.
Okay.
But most of them believe in intercessory prayer from other people, not from the saints. And certainly not from the Virgin Mary.
Oh, certainly not. Okay, next question is from Daniel Frampton. Can Charles tell us anything about the role of Catholic priests who served as military chaplains during the 2 world wars? Were there any complications with priests serving on opposing sides and within units whose soldiers were not necessarily all Catholic? And what role, if any, did the Catholic priest have on the battlefield itself? Great question.
It's a very good question. I do need to have restricted it to the 2 wars, but I know somewhat in general. I wish I knew a lot more in specifics, because I'm aware there are a lot of specifics. They played a huge role in both wars on all sides. They were amazing. A lot of them died looking after their men, were killed accidentally, or went down on ships that had been torpedoed. The acts of heroism.
Yeah.
The acts of heroism that Catholic chaplains performed both in those wars, Korea, Vietnam, and since, are truly legendary. And several of them are up for beatification, several chaplains who died. They would accompany their troops into POW camps. And of course, at the dressing station. There was a very famous, that is to say, at the mansion. There's also a very famous very famous several stories about chaplains of the different sides assisting one another in working with a group of wounded or POWs or whatever. So yeah, I mean it's a tremendous story, and one I wish I knew a lot better, and B, they can be known a lot better because there's so much to it.
Are there books on this? Or?
Oh yeah, and a lot of people have written about it. I mean, just put up Catholic chaplain military hero, and you get tons of things.
To be a military chaplain, is that a volunteer basis, or are you assigned that?
No, it's a volunteer basis. The way it works in this country and most other countries that claim to be Christian, there is the military diocese. Okay, and in our case, the military bishop or the military archbishop lives in Washington, and the parishes are all the Catholic communities of the Army, Navy, Air Force, VA.
Ah.
And in addition, the National Guard units all have chaplains as well. Now, these are priests who volunteer to serve in the military archdiocese from wherever they come.
Mm-hmm.
Once they get into the archdiocese, they're under a weird double jurisdiction. The Army, Navy, Air Force, VA chaplains department, and their own archdiocese. Where they're assigned depends upon the two of those groups colluding.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Okay, next question is from Patty Fournier.
Okay.
Charles, what's your opinion on Cardinal Richelieu? I believe he was a personally devout man, but he did ally with France, or he did ally France with Protestant nations rather often. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, he absolutely, positively. He was personally very devout. I think he had an illegitimate kid or two stuffed away somewhere. And his politics were horrible. You know, they ensured the Protestant victory in the 30 Years' War.
Yeah.
You get, if you read The Three Musketeers or watch various of the film things, there was a great deal of friction between Louis XIII and Richelieu. There was not. If Louis XIII was annoyed with Richelieu, Richelieu would have been in Rome, you know, shooting the Pope's horses or something.
The Cardinal didn't try to... Are you telling me the Cardinal didn't try to usurp the king's throne and take it for himself?
No.
Disney lied to me then. Tim Curry, top 5 favorite villains as Cardinal Richelieu. No, that was totally made up.
Can I tell you something else that's going to hurt?
What?
Are you sure you can take it?
I hope so.
Are you seated?
Yes.
Jiminy Cricket is a cartoon character.
What?
Yes. Jiminy Cricket. When you wish upon a star, makes no difference what you are. Well, anyway, Jiminy Cricket is a cartoon character. He's not a real person.
Why would you say that?
It's true.
You just want to hurt me.
No. That's Boy George's problem, not mine.
Okay, next question is from Will. What is your view of the
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. Sorry.
What is your view of the Renaissance? You have taken a negative tone towards it in your writings. But what about the elevation of the transcendent art and architecture and apparent flourishing of culture?
Well, that part was great. See, the problem is that the Renaissance is with the counterculture of the 60s. Had both positive and had negative effects. But as with the counterculture of the 60s, it's pretty much the negative effects that have survived to the present.
Oh, there are aspects of the counterculture of the 60s you like? That's a
crypto
hippie coming out in you.
Crypto hippie. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the popularity of Lord of the Rings, the artier part of the whole thing. I mean, Tolkien himself declared that the popularity of his book and certain other things reflected a kind of quiet love of cavaliers and this sort of thing, and a dislike of conformity. which he felt, and I agree with him, were very healthy. Instead, of course, on the other side, you have what he called the cult of filth and phineos, which was not so hot.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can guess which of the two elements predominated in that generation's psyche, and now we're on the show today.
So what didn't you like about the Renaissance then?
The tendency toward paganism and toward seeing man as an independent agent, irrespective of his salvation and so forth. But having said that, the great rise of most of the humanists who arose to the Renaissance, when push came to shove to the Reformation, most of them stuck with the church.
Mm-hmm.
So that means there had to be more to humanism than we give it credit for.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I was concerned in my book, and most often when I'm speaking, with the bad things that have come to us in the Renaissance, partly because of its chronological place in history, coming as it did just before the Reformation and contributing to a degree to some of the Reformation action. But the good stuff of the Renaissance I love.
Okay.
St. Peter's Basilica, the Mona Lisa.
Okay.
Wow.
Let's see here. Hi, Charles. This is Michael Hamilton from St. Benedict's Center in New Hampshire. I have a question for you. I am to be the best man at a traditional Catholic wedding in September. I'm trying to plan a Catholic bachelor party and thought you might have some great ideas and perhaps some history and or traditions of the bachelor party. Any advice?
Oh, yes. I do indeed, and you contacted me at other venues, so I'm glad to be able to do it this way rather than sit down and write a long letter. First and foremost, young Mr. Hamilton, you are best man. Now, before I talk about the bachelor party, I've got to explain a little bit about your role. When your groom took you on as his best man, although he probably wasn't aware of it, he was giving you a very difficult lifelong assignment. For as long as you're alive and know the two of them and are in touch with them, which may be to the day you die, it may be until she gets tired of all his old friends. Those are the two alternatives. I've had a few grooms I have not seen since the reception, because sometimes the wife wants to get rid of all the old friends.
Sad.
Well, it is sad. It's not smart, but all you can do is smile and walk away. You know, what are you going to do? Yo, he's my friend.
Yeah.
He married her.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. You know, if you have reservations about about a man's choice in wife, once he's engaged, shut up. Doesn't matter. Put him aside, because I'm telling you, you will lose the friend. You're not going to make him see reason. All right? Just put that out of your head if you feel that way. And look at it this way. At the worst, you may well be able to hold on to the friendship. And at the best, you may be able to get another friend out of a deal, i.e. the wife. So you've got to try to be open. And I know sometimes it can be difficult because the very fact that you were chosen as best man means that you and he have a very tight relationship. His getting married is going to change that. And subconsciously, you know, it's not that we sit around thinking, oh, he's leaving me for that woman. No. But subconsciously, there is an element of jealousy in there. You've got to identify it and destroy it. If you don't, you're going to make everybody a little bit unhappier, certainly yourself.
What was it like, the lifelong obligation you're alluding to?
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
The lifelong obligation, and I make a point of telling my grooms this, because I've done it 16 times, in case you're wondering.
Well.
Yeah, I'm going to start hiring out professionally, you know. New in town, don't know anyone, getting married. I'll be your best man. You're no longer just his friend. You have to try to be the friend of the marriage, the friend of the couple. And what does that mean in concrete terms? Was you just his friend, he came to say, you'll never guess what that woman I married said to me, blah, 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 blah. And you're free, it's just his friend to say, oh my God, how could she be so nasty? But when you're best man, you have to say, oh, well, now, hold on a minute. Is she being unreasonable? Let's look at this. You know, maybe she's not wrong, or maybe she's not entirely wrong. Let's look at this. And, what can be done to fix it? That's where your mind has to start to work. It's a heavy burden. And it lasts as long as you're part of the deal. And I guarantee you, some couples, if you're allowed to occupy that spot, you won't believe what a weird roller coaster you've just gotten on. But if he asks you to be his best man, you must be that close, like brothers. So that's what you do with the people you love. Just as it might be that's what is really required of you. If the wife is simply dead set on all the old friends going away, the best thing you can do for him is shake his hand, turn around, and go bye-bye. Don't argue, don't whine, don't fight, don't wheedle. Even if he tries to continue the friendship knowing she doesn't like it. Why? Because any marriage, and those sorts of marriages in particular, have all sorts of problems. You do not want to be a contributing factor. Not if you're really fond of the guy, the way you said you were when you took up the job. All right. So much for that. Now, the bachelor party. I'm a great believer in bachelor parties the night before the wedding. I realized that in my day we were made of sterner stuff than most.
Oh.
And so it's become very, very, very popular to do it like a week before, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, so everyone can be recovered. And that's nice. I mean, if you're not up to it. No, if you're not up to doing it in the traditional manner, that's fine. A lot of people are very weak physically these days. I think it's all the female hormones in the water.
Wow, you're just assaulting the younger generations here now. Oh, we're not made of the stuff your generation is made of?
You're not the guys who put all the estrogen in the water.
What?
That comes from all the contraceptives that my generation have been constantly dumping in.
Oh, okay, so it's not our fault.
No.
Okay, good.
No. Anyway, why? Were you expecting a proper millennial condemnation?
Yeah.
Well, look somewhere else. You ain't getting it from me. It would be a little much to see somebody who's been deprived of so many things and then yell and scream at him because he doesn't have what he was deprived of.
Okay.
Your parents purposely didn't send you to school, then turn around and attack you for being illiterate. Gee, I wonder how that happened.
That's very reasonable of you.
I would think, but I try. Anyway, but presuming that you've got the thing set up, now comes the fun stuff. A lot of secular bachelor parties have strippers. Don't you do that. There are several reasons for it. It's not just that it's immoral. It's that it's the worst way to prepare a guy for a lifetime of monogamy is to let him see what he's going to be missing. Now, mind you, I did one time. I had a good friend of mine who was English, who was married the daughter of a good friend of mine, and his brother was going to be coming in from England the night before the wedding to be best man. So he didn't have anyone to run his bachelor party. He asked me to do it. And he said he was a Catholic convert, didn't know about our customs. He said so fearfully, Charles, do we Catholics have strippers in our bachelor parties? And sensing a victim, I said, we do, but they're chosen by the fiancé.
Wow.
300 pounds, ladies and gentlemen. How does she stay on her feet? Everybody cheering. Put it on, put it on. Yeah, pretty frightening, yeah? Scared monogamous.
Okay.
But, in truth, no strippers. Remember what it is you're trying to do with the bachelor party. They're doing several things. Firstly, you're bidding farewell to his married life, to his single life, rather. To the period of his life in which your connection with him, yours, the groomsman, started. So, it should have a very sentimental, memory-filled bit to it. So one thing you might do is get a bunch of old photos, of your various pasts together, or albums, or whatever, and have them present for review. Personally, I like the idea of a bachelor dinner, black or even white tie, at as expensive a place as I can afford, or as we can all afford in tandem, except the groom. We shouldn't have to pay for his own dinner. The more formal, the better, because this is a leave-taking of his youth, a leave-taking of his bachelor days. So it should be celebrated properly, like a funeral or a wedding. So have a formal dinner for him, but have all of those albums or photos or whatever available. Make sure that he gets all the food and drink that he particularly likes. Then, if you're smart, and if you really want to help him, constantly reassure him that he's doing the right thing, even if you don't quite believe it. He's already filled with, he's already made up his mind. You can't change him, and you might as well encourage him to, get the last berth on the Titanic. Because it's what he's chosen for himself. Now, having said that, have a good time with it. He's saying farewell to his old life and hello to the new life, and toast the bride's many, many virtues and her beauty and all that kind of good stuff. Any fear you might have, keep yourself. Well, so much for the bachelor party. You should eat and drink and reminisce and get stupid and sentimental and goopy and sing, cry, do whatever you do. Have a good time with it. But you have several other requirements of your best man. If you possibly can, overnight at the groom's place the night before the wedding. Why? Because in the morning, as Amy Vanderbilt puts it, you should act as valet to the groom. Make sure he's got everything in his costume. Make sure you have yours. Make sure everything's under control, and then, and this is one of the things I love most about being a best man, is breakfast with him on the day of his wedding. Because you will be able to sort out a lot of his worry, calm him down, relax, it's all right, everything's fine, everything's great. And then you go with him to the church, and the rest is history. If possible, I would recommend morning coat for all the proceedings, with white tie and black tie, or black tie, as I said, for the bachelor party. And then, again, for the reception, if you can do it. Although very often that means changing around 6 p.m., which can be a little difficult. Anyway, that's my considered advice. I hope it helps you.
Okay. And the next question is from Jay Voiles. You have said in a previous episode that to have a Catholic monarchy, we must first evangelize the country. Could you please elaborate on how becoming a Catholic and or living a devout Catholic life leads one to become a monarchist? I have met and known many devout American Catholics, but never any monarchists.
Well, for starters, because of what is called Americanism in the Church, there is, amongst American Catholics, particularly Irish American Catholics, a very heavy animus against monarchy. Now, in the light of history, in the light of Scripture, it doesn't make any sense. But why should it?
Yeah.
We American Catholics that have always put our country above God, and so we've been paid back beautifully. I must say that I've known quite a few Catholic monarchists. But that's a question of experience. What was the question about how do I do what?
Well, how does becoming a Catholic and leading a devout Catholic life lead one to become a monarchist?
Oh, as you begin to meditate on the kingship of Christ and the queenship of Mary, and as you meditate on the royal saints of the past.
that's actually one of my favorite meditations. That's specifically part of Saint Ignatius' spiritual exercises, where you are serving a king.
Yeah.
And he says you can share everything that I have as long as you do as I do. That's very masculine spirituality the Jesuits have. Unfortunately, they don't really make use of it anymore.
Why should they? But no, so that's you know once you realize the monarchist bent of our liturgy, of our devotional life, of our history, it becomes more and more real to you. And other people will follow your lead.
Do Catholics have a specific view of authority that is different than perhaps Protestants or other?
Yes, we believe that authority of all sorts, rightful authority, to include civil authority, is granted by God.
To me, that seems to lend itself to monarchism.
It does. It does. And people have to basically make up a whole set of arguments to avoid that.
Yeah.
But the easy answer is, yeah, sure, there it is.
Okay. Our last question today from MJX Honsinger. What does a day in the life of Charles Coulombe look like?
Sheer chaos.
No!
No, I get up in the morning, or the crack of noon.
The crack of noon?
The crack of noon, depending on when I've been to bed. On Wednesday, I'll be up at 5 o'clock a.m. and I'll go to the LA Breakfast Club.
Oh, yeah.
Then I'll usually go to a noon mass at Blessed Sacrament, Hollywood. Hang out with the Jebbies a little bit.
The Jebbies?
Yeah, the Jesuits.
Oh, okay.
But see, one of the things that I've always got different things to do every day. But one thing that I have to do every day is go to Mass. Well, fortunately, living in the LA area, I can go 8, 9:30, noon, 5:30, 6, 6:30, and 7.
Isn't there a 3 o'clock one somewhere? I thought you said a 3 o'clock one somewhere. No, okay, maybe not.
I don't know. Anyway, so that's a very, very important thing to me. If I don't make it to Mass in a day, I really feel it.
Yeah.
And then everything else is dependent upon either work to be written or appointments to be made. You know. So no 2 days of Charles Coulombe look anything remotely alike.
Okay. Well, any other, I don't know, adventures that you've gotten into lately that, do we get to say what you do on weekends now?
Yeah, on the Renaissance Fair.
Yeah, you're an actor in it.
Yes, I've been playing the evil Sir Rafe Sadler, who really is evil, a terrible piece of work. Collaborated with Thomas Cromwell in destroying the monasteries, and then when Cromwell lost the king's favor, turned on his old boss, kept the king's favor for himself. Just an absolutely horrible piece of work. But I play it. So, the richest commoner in the whole of England in his day.
Okay. Well, gosh, I guess that'll do it for this episode. If you enjoyed listening to Charles, remember to subscribe and remember to like our videos. We need more likes on our videos, everybody. So get that part of your routine. So yeah, and let's see. If you'd like to send Charles questions, you can do so through the Tumble House website. And remember, if it's Monday, it's off the menu.
And if it's off the menu, it might be worth eating. Ciao.